right, and please, we are also live on Facebook and YouTube, KUTV Kenya. That's where we are at. Interact with the rest of the fans there. Alafu tutaangalia our comment section and how mambo yamechemka as we have this very difficult conversation. I don't know if it's difficult for the man I have invited here, Samuel Ouma. Welcome to the show another time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, how have you been?
I've been well.
Right.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
Yeah.
Is this a difficult conversation to have? Because I think I've started with that statement. I don't know if that's also the same sentiment that you hold.
No, it's quite elaborate discussion and timely.
Right.
Worth having.
Right.
Yeah.
I know we do skirt around most of the problems in the country, so it's kind of difficult to point out where we are going wrong and also where we need to correct. Maybe to our viewers on how you think the situation looks like right now. Is it as dire as it being painted? The statistics here, as I've read earlier, 2.97 million of jobless youth in the country, 80,000 jobs lost right after the election. Right now we are, in the past 3 weeks at least now, we've seen opposed to that situation, the protests. These are jobless youth who are showing up in the streets. Is the situation as bad as we are painting it?
Okay, thank you so much. You know, statistics don't lie. And the situation is quite dire, but the positive things that with a commendable strategy, we can come out of that. Yeah.
Right.
The unfortunate issue with our country is that we, rather than healing the whole situation, we placate it with temporary issues rather than having long-term strategy and giving a permanent panaceas to effects that we have.
Right.
We are for short-term and things that help us in the short term rather than addressing it, putting to paid the problems that that hinder us as a republic. That's our undoing.
Right.
We are short term rather than long term. Yeah.
Right. We're going to have a look at a couple of those situations as well. But first, before maybe we delve deeper into this conversation, you are an entrepreneur yourself and also a political enthusiast. Maybe for the guys who are tuning in for the first time, to get an understanding of what you do, you know, as a political enthusiast, as an entrepreneur, and also how you yourself you're approaching this dire situation in the republic.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm a trained actuary, currently doing the papers, and also a political enthusiast because everything is aligned to politics. How you live, the cost of living, everything emanates from the political discourse. If we get our politics right, everything will be right. I'm also an entrepreneur because I'm passionate about changing the life, the social life of our society, and also having a positive impact on issues that affect us as a people, and also trying to create jobs in the long term.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So how do you approach a situation like we are having right now in the republic? Because there are no jobs. If I'm trying to pursue business, taxation is also waiting me around the corner, waiting for me around the corner. Registration fees. I don't even have a job already to even have enough money to get license or a permit from the government. How do you approach it yourself before we look at these challenges?
That's a commendable question. Number one is to cut costs as much as possible, because the cost of productions are quite high, and once the cost of production are quite high, everything is tampered with. So number one is to cut the production cost as much as possible, and see how you can survive and maintain your employees, and also because I've learned in business, staying afloat sometimes is good. Not making profit, just staying afloat is also part of making profit.
Right, momentum. As long as you're keeping it
but
going.
Don't close.
And that's for business, right? And you know, trying to see how you can reduce your expenditure and, you know, balance out and see if you get more profit. Now, when we have a look at politics, right? Last year we had voter apathy, where there were more than 8 million or more than 7 million of registered voters who didn't turn out to vote, and there are much more of those who didn't even register to vote, and a majority of them are the youth. As a political enthusiast, how do you keep your spirit going in a situation or in an environment where the youth have really lost hope in the fruits of democracy, or even in participating in the political process in general?
Yeah, it's so egregious because it's not just a Kenyan issue. If you checked the Nigerian was quite worse. It's so unfortunate because everything that we are crying for as youth emanate from good politics, and because everything is canvassed in parliament, and parliament is a product of politics and good governance. That shows you that the youth have lost hope in politics, and therefore they have lost hope in society, because you cannot separate society and politics. Yeah.
Right. And how do we then bring them back? You know, maybe for you it's, you know, as someone who's an enthusiast and daily having a look at these things, you can sort of look at how important they are. How do we transfer that importance to others as well?
Okay, good. The important thing is that the political class have for the longest period alienated the youth from the political discourse and decision-making table. The only way they can bring the youth back is to factoring them in key issues and also making them part of decision-making modern-day society. Yeah.
All right. So inclusivity is going to be the biggest way that we can turn around the situation.
How is the voice of the youth heard? Because once my voice is heard, then I'm part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you really say as the key areas then? Now we are looking at this crisis, the cost of living. What are the key areas that then the youth should be having a look at or to highlight so that they can survive? As you said, with business, sometimes it's good to stay afloat, and maybe also in an economic crisis as the one we're facing, and as you've rightfully pointed there, this is affecting many nations across the world. How do we then stay afloat? Which areas should the youth be looking at?
It's affecting the third world countries.
Harder than more,
The youth don't have much to do. Much is in the hands of the government. What should government do to help the youth? Because at the end of the day, it's the government that have the systems to assist us. It's the government that come up with policies. So how can government come up with policies? And we are emerging from the war in Ukraine and the COVID-19 pandemic that have had a dent in our economy. And also we have the political instability that has also affected the supply chain in our country and other things. And you know, mostly in Kenya and sub-Sahara countries, high cost of living is fueled by two things mainly: energy and food. Energy and food.
Right.
And the main thing that we can help out is how can the government come on board to assist the youth and the country as a general. I have a trifurcated approach on how the government can do this. Number one is agriculture.
Right.
The war in Ukraine has shown us that we are not agriculture sustainable.
Right.
Yeah, because of any external force to us, we are affected.
Right.
So what can government do? And it's so unfortunate that we import oil, and 95% of oil that we consume in Kenya is imported.
Right.
Yet we have raw materials in the country, and we need policies that can help us to come with industries to manufacture this oil locally and to create employment and see how things can pan out. Another thing is urban migration, because after school most youth comes to the city. How can the government align the labor force to the number of employees, because universities churn thousands of graduates annually. How can the government come up with industries that can align to the massive labor force that
is coming out into the market.
Right. So that's a policy issue. That's nothing that the youth can do. Is the government, because the youth don't have the resources to do that. It's the government through the taxes and other issues.
Right.
Another thing that the government can do, I've talked about agriculture, urbanization. Another thing is policy, fiscal policy, because our main issue is debt. The debt is choking us, and we are a debt appetite country. And how can we stay within our means? That's the issue with our country, because Kenya is not poor. Kenya has enough resources to sustain herself without the loans. Even now, the Vision 2030, I remember it was launched in 2012, 2011, and I've been waiting for it patiently and enthusiastically. But now it's in tatters, because we don't have the economic capacity to realize it, because once we focus on Vision 2030, we'll income more debt, and as it stands today, we are now choking on high cost of repaying the debts. So it's mainly government, the government to be
what it can do. I will maybe hold your thought there for a second. Maybe someone would say that the government has tried to implement some fiscal policies and maybe programs that would aid the youth. There is the youth fund that maybe the youth can take advantage of. There is also the Hustler Fund that is newly launched by the Kenya Kwanza government. Do you think that these are not, would you say that these are enough? We've seen sometimes even a breakdown from chief economist David Ndi saying that you get 500 Hustler Fund, go borrow a wheelbarrow, buy a couple of stems of sugarcane, and then repeat the process until you get out of it successful. Is this a possible route for us to pursue as the youth, or are this just
political stance?
So the government is just trying to keep the youth calm?
Yeah, that's a good question. Number one, the government has tried, and there's also an issue on the youth part because the youth lack credible information on what's available for them in the public. Number two is what government is offering. Are they aligned to the aspirations of the youth? Because in the current economic milieu, you cannot give a youth 500. He cannot sustain himself even for one day. What package? Because I was of the idea, if the government is this Hustler Fund, if the government can open industries with it, if the government can open economic doors with it, the employment that can come out from that and the cascading economic effect can be greater than the
loans that are being handed out
individually, because these are given to buy food, but in the long run, if we can create some sustainable economic environment, that will be good. But another thing is also our education system. Our education system does not make the youth ready for the market, because university is to open the mind of the youth. But ours, we are more of efficiency rather than hands on deck. We want more efficiency rather than character. And it's quite unfortunate that the youth have been made wage slavers because they come out of campus knowing that I must be employed.
I have a degree.
I have a degree, I must be employed. And that's very dangerous. Our education system is one-sided. And as Martin Luther King noted some decades back, education must be bifurcated. It must two sides of it, the efficiency and the intelligence part, and also the character part, How does it prepare you for the social life?
Speaking of education there, it's no longer an attractive option for the youth, and as we've mentioned there, HELB last month said 140,000 of these campus going students might not have access to these funds which they use for accommodation, tuition and whatnot. At the same time, we're also discussing a situation where if you graduate, you're not going to get a job, so which means I do not have even the incentive or motivation to go find some means to pay for my tuition and go through this college life. How do you then instill education or these skills to this student or to this large population of the youth who now no longer regard education as the key to success?
Okay, thank you so much. I was so appalled when I read the statistics, 140,000 students, and was so burdened when I read that 99%, if not 100%, hail from a disadvantaged background. And that's the biggest discrimination, because any discrimination that comes from a publicly funded education system is the worst discrimination.
Form of discrimination.
Because you are denying these people their future, because education is the only equalizer that we have in the world. And I implore the government to see how they can tackle that, because I know they have the wherewithal to tackle that. They can cut expenditure from other and superfluous avenues to channel resources to this kitty.
Definitely. And now then someone would say, these are too many problems, the cost of living, the unemployment crisis, even going to school is a problem, then maybe I should move to another country. Will you, how would you respond to such a statement from a youth who's saying, and then I'd rather look for greener pastures elsewhere? rather than sink in this sea of problems?
From my point of view, Kenya is still the the future of the world. And if you saw when Kamala Harris was in Africa, he had a tour of Africa, she said that she was so point blank that Africa is the future of the world because of our growing population, our growing innovation, and the fecundity in our youth.
Right.
And Kenya is still the place to be. And Kenya, once you are innovative, once you have clarity of thought, and you know how to find solutions to the problem that affect our society, then you'll have your way. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So you are saying that, stick around.
Stick around.
There's something good coming.
There's something good.
What shows you this sort of promise? Maybe you can point out a few things that you've seen and they've given you that sense of hope, because this conversation is not about, discouraging or pointing out a very dark picture. And then, at the end of the conversation, it's like, now I know more problems that I didn't know I have. What sort of gives you a bright outlook into the future?
Okay, good. Let me note something here. As Africa is still in the middle of political instability and other issues that are bedeviling it, Asia, China, Europe, and other parts of the world are consolidating their resources to come do business in Africa in terms of venture capitalists, in terms of, because they know the potential that Africa has. So if we align ourselves to the resources that these people bring, because they want innovative youth, people who can use their resources well, then that's it. Once you are innovative and know how to do things, that's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Finally, to hold the government to account, as you said, there are very limited resources that the youth have access to, which means the buck stops with the government. It's the one with the resources, Mali ya Umma, trying to come up with some of those programs that you have said. So how can we then hold it to account? We've seen that opposition chief Raila Odinga is having trying to do an engagement with the president, and as much as they're saying it's a bipartisan conversation, maybe it's bipartisan to the two of them, right? It's what will make the opposition chief feel like all his concerns have been addressed, and also what the president feels will be good for him to continue having a smooth rule into the next few years in his term. So while they're having that in closed boardrooms, behind closed doors, how do then someone who's watching this show, how would they be able, or how would you advise that they hold the government to account to ensure that maybe the representatives from their constituency or the governor, they're doing what they feel will be valuable for the youth into their future? They're not robbing them of that future, as you put it.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. No?
Right.
And let me point from the root of it. The root of it is that our politics, there's an issue with our politics because our politics rotate about individuals. Once Raila is safe, then the people are safe.
And
once Ruto is safe, and that's so unfortunate. And it's also so sad that we don't find a long-term solution to this problem, because if you look at the history of our country, it's replete with such political rapprochements and also betrayals, and we don't have solutions to pay these problems, because it's predictable that in 2027 there'll be chaos, there'll be a bipartisan approach. In 2032, the question is how can we put to end such issues?
Right.
Another thing is about our people. Because our form of politics is representative. How do we hold our politicians account? Because everything is canvassed in parliament.
Right.
Everything that was being done on the street is better sorted in parliament. How as a people are we holding our MPs accountable in terms of taxation, in terms of lowering the price of maize flour? It's done in parliament. So it's high time that we hold our representatives accountable and be part of the change. And I think that I want to hold, when there was Mandamano, we were brought on board. But now there's a bipartisan approach. Where are we? Because I feel that we've neglected.
No one has called out for people's representative to come to the talks.
Because I feel like once the big boys are sorted, then our problem is sorted, which is so sad, and is the cause of the perennial issues that we don't sort the cause of it.
Okay.
We find short-term solutions.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'll ask the bipartisan team that has been cobbled by the other side to be so fastidious, to put all cards on the table, to tell Kenyans what's happening, and to also be in line with the aspirations of Kenyans.
Okay.
Yeah. Because once they hide other things on the table, then things might not be okay again.
Right.
Yeah.
And in that spirit of trying to also ask the youth to take up initiative in their own regard, there are also some of these initiatives that we mentioned, including seeing here that according to a draft 2023 budget policy statement, the government is going to reiterate its support for the sports industry. So there are also avenues, apart from employment and starting business. You can also try and see how your skill can be a source of income and revenue through such plans as Talanta Hela, where the government is trying to monetize sport and the creative industry. Also, maybe taking advantage of the shifting job market from how it is now to the technological revolution that we're witnessing. More opportunities that are outside the bounds of government that the youth can take a look at. Right. Maybe your last now call to action for this disenfranchised youth who feel like the government has not put them into consideration. There are these ones who are losing jobs. We're saying that get skills, try to find a way to do entrepreneurship or find jobs, and then someone else is losing a job. There's many layoffs that are happening. How would you maybe give an encouragement and also a statement to sort of paint a brighter future so that we are afloat, just like
Okay, fantastic. Number one, I'll urge our people to, the old adage that live within your means, but they'll tell them live below your means to survive in the current economic zeitgeist there. And number two is to ask the youth to increase their skill set, because you find upscale their skill set, and also tell our youth not to be close-minded, only to be have their eyes trained on one thing. There are a lot of things that we can do. There's agriculture. Agriculture has a lot of potential in terms of the current food insecurity, and also the commendable opportunities that the government has opened that the youths have no idea about. So if they can update themselves on what the government has done for them, the resources available for them to help them improve their life.
Right.
But above all, keep up the hope and push.
Right.
Yeah.
And keep pushing. Thank you very much, Samuel Ouma, for having
so
that
much
with me. I'm hoping that we can do this again.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right. Biashara Tuesday is taking that short break here. Then we'll be back. More conversations are happening, coming to you in an economic crisis and in a place where there's joblessness and there's layoffs. Your mental health can really be affected. So how do you keep sane when all of this is happening? How do you ensure that your mental health is in check? That's a conversation I'm having with Alan Kuchwa, who's a mental health advocate and also an author. But remember, grab your newspapers. Jesse Kimotho will be here for a newspaper review. Be looking at those headlines. Biashara Tuesday. We'll be back.